Welcome friends. In this part of the video we shall look at this is part 3 of the videos on guide to documentary credits. This is going to be a preparatory course, a CRAM course for CDCS examinations. We shall look at documentary credits, types, uses and characteristics. We are going by the book called Guide to Documentary Credits meant for CDCS examination. There are basically two major types of credits for the sake of classification. One is a commercial documentary credit and another is a standby letter of credit. The commercial documentary credit is a documentary credit used in a normal commercial transactions where there is an underlying buying and selling, and letter of credit is used as a payment method for the particular trade. A standby letter of credit is used for default situations. It's rarely used in the sense that a letter of credit will be issued in the name of standby letter of credit, but it will not be normally invoked by the party to claim funds under the transaction. It is used for defaults. The purpose of letter of credit is to facilitate and the finance of trade, which means in a commercial documentary credit, pre-shipment finance is available, post-shipment discounting of the bills is available, and similar other financing facilities are available for the underlying trade. That is a basic purpose of having, or one additional purpose of having letter of credit as a payment mechanism for a trade. A letter of credit is an undertaking. It's an undertaking from an independent, trusted third party. Both the commercial letter of credit as well as the standby letter of credit are both issued by banks. So it is a trusted third party that is giving an undertaking, and it is independent of the underlying trade transaction, whether goods were shipped or not, whether anything else like the services or performance agreed had happened or not. If there is a claim under LC, if the claim is compliant, payment will be made, will have to be honored. That is a promise that the issuing bank gives to the beneficiary of the letter of credit. So the payment is conditional only upon A, meeting the terms and conditions of the credit, and B, being the submission of stipulated documents. The independent trusted third party, the bank, is not concerned with any of the underlying sales or the goods or the contracts. So whatever happens to the underlying contract, whatever happens to the underlying goods, whatever happened to the other documents, the banks are not worried. Banks are worried about the documents presented, and that has to be compliant. What's a commercial DC? Commercial DC is basically a payment mechanism. It is effective, or it fulfills a function when performance has occurred, when the beneficiary of the LC, the shipper, had shipped the goods and the supplier had presented the documents stipulated, he is eligible for payment if the documents are conforming. What's a standby DC? Standby DC is a contingent payment mechanism, not principal but contingent. When it is triggered by non-performance or default. How it happens? The beneficiary of the standby letter of credit will claim under standby LC when he does not receive the payment under the credit. Or in other words, the beneficiary of the standby is expecting the applicant of the standby to effect payment. The applicant of the standby may also be an importer. It's not compulsory. It may be for so many other situations also. If the applicant of the standby LC does not perform, then the beneficiary of the standby LC will claim under the standby letter of credit. What is an sblc? The standby letter of credit, it is not legally distinct from demand guarantees. So technically, when we say the beneficiary of the standby LC will claim if and only if the applicant does not perform or does not serve, it means it is nothing but a demand guarantee. So the drawing happens only in case of a default. So why we have a standby LC and when demand guarantees are already there? In certain jurisdictions, there were restrictions for banks to issue guarantees, and so banks started issuing a promise in the form of guarantee in the name of standby LC to bypass the regulatory restrictions. What are the different types of standbys? One is a performance standby, the obligation to perform other than to pay money. If I have to do something, then I will issue a performance standby. What happens? When I have a building contract, when the building contract is completed, the last 10% or 15% retention money will be paid against submission of a performance guarantee, saying what? The building, the machine, whatever has been built, the dam that has been built, the road that has been laid, the airport that has been constructed, everything will perform as per specifications. And this promise is given by the contractor to the owner or the user of the airport or bridge or whatever it is, saying this will perform its function and you may release the retention money against this guarantee. What's advance payment guarantee? If I am paying money in advance and I don't know whether you will be able to ship or not, I will ask you to give me a guarantee saying the advance payment that I made to you will be returned if no shipment is made. So this is an advance payment standby. What's a bid bond or a tender bond? When we are inviting bids, Then the party inviting bids will also ask the parties who are participating in the bid to submit a bond saying in case the bid is awarded to you, you will be able to execute the contract or the bid awarded. What's a counter standby? When a standby is issued, I will be asking for some back-to-back liability or responsibility on your part to be expressed explicitly in the form of an indemnity, and such a thing is called a counter standby. This is for issuance of another standby. If I ask you to give me a standby, it is called counter standby. What's a financial standby? Financial standby supports the obligation to pay money. If I have to pay you money, instead of giving you the money, I will give you a financial standby. Commercial standby. This is to pay for the goods or services. This is nothing but another version of our commercial letter of credit, because this is supposed to pay for the goods or services. If I don't pay under the normal course, you can claim under the standby. What's a direct pay standby? Direct pay standby is a primary means of payment. Normally other standbys are supposed to be a contingency means of payment, but here it is a primary means of payment. It may or may not be linked to non-performance or default. What's an insurance standby? Insurance standby is to support the insurance or reinsurance obligation when there are big sums of to be insured, and when the premium cannot be calculated and the time when the premium is due cannot be calculated, we get an insurance standby issued so that the reinsurers requirements are met out of this insurance standby if the insurance company does not pay the reinsurance company. The first reference to the standbys were made by ICC in March 1977. In March 1977, ICC agreed that the standbys are also another types of credit and it can be covered by the UCP of those days. What's the standby? Even if the applicant claims that they have performed, the bank issuing the standby will have to pay under the terms of the standby. So, irrespective of the fact that the applicant claims that payment has been made, bank will have to again pay under the standby, provided the specific documentation is given and the terms are met. Or not, what normally we will ask for? We may ask for a draft or we may ask for a demand, simple demand. It can also be a demand by SWIFT or telex and not even by paper. So SPLCs are similar to bank guarantees in almost all aspects. We have rules for bank guarantees in the form of uniform rules for demand guarantees. It's called ICC publication number 758, the latest one. So earlier we had 458. This uniform rules for demand guarantees meets all the requirements of issuance of a guarantee or issuance of contract bonds. We have URCB also, uniform rules for contract bonds. In spite of the fact that we have these two rules and guarantees are possible, banks are issuing SBLCs subject to UCP. And in 1977, as we seen earlier, ICC recognized that UCP can be used for issuance of SBLC also, or in other words, SBLC can be made subject to UCP. UCP 600 had an explicit reference to standby in the credit, and they may be issued subject to the rules, though many articles of the UCP may not be any use for SPLCs. The articles of UCP, like transport document, may not be applicable to standby LCs because it does not relate to the actual presentation of shipping documents. Presentation period may not be applicable, but still UCP 600 can be used and the SPLC can be made subject to UCP 600. So because URDG was also available, but people were not issuing guarantees due to certain restrictions, and SPLCs can be issued subject to UCP, but certain articles of UCP are not applicable to SPLC situations because it is a contingent payment mechanism and not a direct payment mechanism. We have had a need for a new rules, and accordingly ICC came up with International Standby Practices, ISP. International Standby Practices is supposed to be the guiding rule for standby LCs, standbys, and this is called ISP 98 and it is effective from January 99 and it's ICC publication number 590. The URDG is called 758 while the ISP is called 590, publication number 590. ISP 98 reflects the generally accepted practice, custom and usage. So ISP 98 has been drafted keeping in view what or how the standbys are used in the market. What is the generally accepted market practice? What are the customs related to standbys and how the standbys are used? And it provides a more relevant framework for SPLCs. The ISP 98 provides more relevant framework to SPLCs. It means the UCP is not exactly 100% mirroring the framework for which SBLCs is meant or is being used. And these ISP 98 are the rules intended for use in the daily practice of standbys. Standbys are contingent payment mechanisms. What does the ISP 98 involve? ISP 98 is split into certain chapters. There are 10 chapters. First is general provisions, just like the definitions and interpretations of UCP 600. Then we have the obligations, what the issuing bank is obligated to and what others are, just like we have an issuing bank confirming obligation. It talks about how a presentation has been made under the standby, how the documents presented under the standby, the draft or the demand or whatever it is, the claim has to be examined. It says how the notice should be given, what are the preclusions. Preclusions means if you have taken some action, then you are precluded from claiming something something else, and how the documents have been disposed of. It also talks about transfer and assignment of the SBLCs. We have seen transfer in Article 98 and assignment in Article 99 of UCP. This is the transfer and assignment of standbys under the ISP 98. And it also talks about transfer by operation of law, which means the beneficiary of a standby, if it is an individual, if he dies, it will go to his heirs. So likewise, if it is a corporate, if a corporate is taken over, then who will become the beneficial owner of the standby due to operation of law? And it talks about if it is assignment, what happens, then how the standby can be cancelled, what are the reimbursement obligations in the standby, what is the importance of timing, what is supposed to be done in promptly, and how the syndication and participation is being carried out for issuance of standby. These are the 10 areas or chapters that is covered by the standby practices. We have seen the standby in a different series of lectures, just like we have seen the UCP and URR and other things.